Welcome back, everyone. We're Simply Bitcoin. We break down the news, the daily fail, meme review, software releases, hardware releases, the pleb sites, and joining us today, we've got the spokesperson for the Freedom Convoy of Canada, trucker, fellow Bitcoiner. I'm talking about BJ Dichter is joining us. That's right, BJ, what's going on?
Good to see you, man. How are you?
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. We're going to dive into the numbers right now. Let's do it, people.
Number time. Brought to you by Nodl. They make some of the best Bitcoin nodes, like the Nodl Dojo. Yes, it's in red, and that means it's faster. Run your own version of Bitcoin Core and Lightning. And remember, guys, if you don't run your own node, you're trusting someone else's. That's not a good thing. Third parties are not a good thing. So get yourself a Nodl today.
At the time of this recording, the block height is 733,550. The Bitcoin price, 40,175. Chain rewrite days, 719. Total public lightning capacity, 3,620.75. Moscow time, 2489. Blocks to the halvening, 106,450. And the Samurai Whirlpool unspent capacity, Samurai Whirlpool is a CoinJoiner collaborative spend. It is not a mixing service, and the unspent capacity in that pool is 4,533.44 BTC. Nico, the boring ass numbers.
The boring ass numbers. Bitcoin is the new stable coin. I'm going to keep saying that. You guys wouldn't know if you were reading it every single day the same way. But anyways, I got a very spicy video. Before we get into the video, oh my God, I'm going to have to give you guys a prelude. We are apolitical on Simply Bitcoin. We don't lean left, we don't lean right in the traditional fiat sense. We stand for freedom because that's what Bitcoin represents. So if you're against freedom, if you're for censorship, right, obviously that's against Bitcoin, right? So I just want to clarify that because it is going to be a very spicy episode, I'm expecting. Anyways, let's start off with this video from Jen Psaki, the White House spokeswoman for the Biden administration. And very interesting stuff, because all of a sudden, after Elon Musk successfully acquired Twitter, all of a sudden, right, the party that has been against the Section 230 reform, right, which is what gives social media platforms in the United States essentially immunity from lawsuits or any of that stuff, all of a sudden, right, misinformation, bad, it needs reform. So anyways, let's check out what she has to say, and then
the Surgeon General has said that misinformation about COVID amounts to a public health crisis.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, regardless of ownership, would the White House be interested in working with Twitter like it has in the past to continue to combat this kind of misinformation? Or are we in a different part of the pandemic where that kind of partnership is no longer necessary?
Well, I think we engage regularly with all social media platforms about steps that can be taken. That has continued, and I'm sure it will continue. But there are also reforms that we think Congress could take, and we would support taking, including reforming Section 230, enacting antitrust reforms, requiring more transparency, and the president is encouraged by the bipartisan support for or engagement in those efforts.
So, and if you just start reading the comments, it's just hilarious. It's funny because Musk said he'd make the algorithm more sourced, and it's the definition of transparency. There actually is about so now they're all of a sudden concerned about social media after something doesn't go in the elite's favor. What about the rest of the media outlets? Any thoughts on holding them accountable as well? Right on cue. So it's just. It's ridiculous, and kind of connected dots with what we were talking about with Obama yesterday and Hillary Clinton, right? Like, they just came out of the cave and they were just like, yeah, we have to, these online platforms, this too much speech is dangerous, right? It's just funny, that it just, all of a sudden when they don't have the ability to, control the narrative, right? So, and it goes back to, why is Elon, acquiring Twitter? Why is he for freedom of speech, right? Obviously, the dude pays a crap ton of taxes, right? I think he's the record holder of taxpayers. So it's obviously he's just following his own incentives, right? But it's just the hypocrisy, and kind of connect this with yesterday's episode, right? With how Europe essentially wants to, make social media platforms safer from illegal activity and misinformation. Unfortunately, for a lot of these politicians in America, there's the First Amendment. There's the pesky, pesky First Amendment, right? So they're going to have a lot more trouble doing what they want over here, but in Europe, I think it's a lost cause, and Canada as well. Anyways, I'm going to pass it on to BJ. BJ, what are your thoughts on this? You have a lot of experience. How much bullshit was that?
It's so gross and disgusting because we're going through this now in Canada that we have a bill that's either just passed or in second, third reading and passing. But essentially what it does is, because they need to make the internet, I don't know if you heard, they need to make it more safe, right? Because the internet's very dangerous. So the way they're going to do it in Canada is you need to not just show papers, please, to enter the country. You need to show papers, please, to be a journalist. So you need to apply for a license to be a journalist. And it's not like, your fishing license in the middle of, Huntsville, Ontario, to go fish for some trout. This is, if you get the license, you get massive tax incentives that the legacy media cannot survive without because they're completely incompetent, fake news, and useless. So if you decide not to go that route, then you need to be completely self-sustainable financially. Who would have thought a business that actually has to turn a profit to be viable? No, they can't have that in Canada. And the solution is to have a license. And the person who's brought it in, and Nico, you may resonate with this, his name is Pablo Rodriguez. He's an MP. And his father, for those on a certain political side in his party don't understand, his father was a communist guerrilla during the dirty war, the Guerra Sucia in Argentina. And this guy holds the exact same belief system. So people in the West really need to wake up because, as I mentioned in a space last night, I'm one of the few Canadians that has lived in a country that had a communist guerrilla faction. And this is what they look like. It's not the Bolsheviks coming over the mountain with a bunch of tanks that they're going to take over. That's not how it is. It's all sunshines and rainbows and nice music, and we're caring for the people. This is how it starts. And it's getting very dangerous in that country, as we saw with the Freedom Convoy.
Absolutely. And just I'm going to pass it on to you, Phil. So just the combined effort, right, of it's not a coincidence that this is all happening at once. It's not a coincidence that they're trying to KYC the internet in Europe, make it more safe. It's not a coincidence that there's similar attempts in Canada, right? And the reason that we wanted to focus this on a Bitcoin show is, what do you think they're gonna go after next? What is the only payment that they couldn't stop to the truckers? It was Bitcoin. Right? So this is just the first step to totalitarianism. It's very unfortunate. You have to resist it at the gates. Unfortunately, I am very pessimistic about Canada. Phil, how do you feel about this?
It's like BJ said, right? It's all sunshine and rainbows until we're goose-stepped into the gulag eating bugs. and that's the end result, right? But until we're there, everything's going great. So I think I'm going to take a bit of a different angle on this whole thing because this ties into Elon and Twitter, okay? And I know that a lot of people are cheering that on as being like this win, for capitalism and all this stuff. But look, at the end of the day, he's just great at soliciting funds from the government. So you can cheer that all you want. I understand there's tons of fanboys for Tesla. I can appreciate their love for the vehicles and all the fun tech. But at the end of the day, I don't think he's really going to do anything in terms of freedom enabling on that platform. I think that we're going to find ourselves in a situation where he's part of the censorship problem. But anyways, going back to this whole thing now with Jen Psaki, right? These people are just clowns, and it's so laughable. And the fact that anybody, look, we say this all the time, the mainstream media, that's a lie. It's not mainstream. Those are just words. The alternative, essentially the independent media, that is the mainstream media. What she is talking to, the people she is talking to, are the people who believe essentially the corporate media. And
I would even call them propaganda media because and in Canada,
corporate propaganda media.
And in Canada, I know this is a fact, right? they're actually paid by the Canadian government, right? Talk about misaligned incentives. So I don't know if you want to add to that, BJ.
$1.2 trillion, I believe it's annually, that the state media gets in Canada, plus several hundreds of millions of dollars goes to the private media corporations that operate there. But something interesting, and your audience will understand this, during the convoy, I took every opportunity to call the legacy, not mainstream because they're fringe, but the legacy media fake news at every opportunity. Every time I was on stage, every press conference, fake news, fake news, fake news. Well, just to give you an example, what does that $1.2 trillion to the CBC get you? It gets you articles where their headline is, the government of Canada has blocked Bitcoin transactions to the truckers. Is that how it works? Really? Gumshoes? Is that all the research you did? Because we know, all of us in Bitcoin know that it can't be blocked. And as I said, Nico, when we met, this was, I think, an historical moment, this trucker convoy, because all of that kind of hyperbolic scenarios that we always heard about, that, governments are powerless to block it and whatever. We all thought, okay, well, in Iran, in Venezuela, in North Korea, you name the country with a dystopian dictatorship, that's where it would be utilized and prove itself. But no, it proved itself on the world stage, where Prime Minister Blackface Diversity Trudeau turned Canada into a banana republic. And what happened? Bitcoin was the only thing that got through. And they were powerless to stop it. And they were very, very frustrated with it. It was amazing.
I would even go on to add to that. I would say it put the fear of God into them. Like it scared the crap out of them. The fact that they, because that's what government has. It has a monopoly on violence. The fact that they couldn't use that monopoly to essentially censor a transaction, I know, like, it just the response, right? And you could see it in their faces. They're like, these are people that are used to having absolute power, and they're powerless here. It's the individual that has the power, right? So and I suspect. And
also, just something to add on that, if you don't mind my saying,
of course,
you opened up and you talked about, we're not left, we're not right, we're whatever. We are, we're nonpartisan in the political sphere. And I agree, because, stealing people's donation money or trying to starve them is not a liberal value. Justin Trudeau is not liberal. If he was liberal, great, we would be able to talk with each other because we both value freedom. That's why throughout the entire convoy, I had people from across the political spectrum reaching out to us and, deciding, hey, we disagree on some things that the government should or should not do, but we all understand the importance of freedom. And that's what I've always loved about the Bitcoin world. I don't want to call it a community, but the various Bitcoin communities in the Bitcoin world, because we all understand that common denominator and the importance of that value. And the people who claim to be, quote, liberal in the political world today globally, they're not liberal. They're the complete opposite. They're totalitarian. And we do need more liberals and people on the right to come together to kind of save us from this dystopian future, because if not, these people are going to come after our Bitcoin.
100%, and that moves, right? Because it used to be that the liberals were for freedom of speech, right? It just happens to be in this moment in history, for one reason or the other. Some people say it's China's influence, right? They've just gone the totalitarian route, and again, if you're for censorship, you're an enemy of Bitcoin, and that's just how it is, right? And it has nothing to do with the traditional parties. It's just very unfortunate. Let's see how it plays out. Yeah.
Phil, you'll know this because you're a fellow Gen Xer. We discussed the generation nobody cares about. Remember in the 90s when the political right was trying to censor music and trying to censor video games, all that sort of stuff? Absolutely. So we've been through it on the other side. Mm-hmm. It's now the authoritarian. They have evolved and have gone down the direction of free speech, and the other side has gone towards totalitarianism. It's crazy.
So interestingly enough, sorry, just to finish up on that point that you just made, BJ. So do you know what ended up coming of that? Because I ended up working in the self-serve DVD rental industry, and I got to see up close. So all of that censorship, all of that crap that they tried to do, all it ended up with was extra red tape for people attempting to make a business out of selling these, music and movies.
That's right.
It forced everybody then to have to apply to a special association that you now have to get these like special stickers, and you have to code them specifically.
The bureaucracy, bro.
It's
just
insane.
grows. Just
and
grows.
In the end, everybody still had access to the same shit. If you wanted stuff that was censored, you still got it. It made no sense. Anyways.
No, it made total sense to just grow the government, right? That's literally what it is.
Program. It's a jobs program.
And this is, and this is why separating money from state is so important, or none of this will ever change. But anyways, Phil, it's time for it.
The Daily Fail. Brought to you by Amber App. Check them out. Amber.app. Fair spreads, low fees, smart automation, a stacking app by actual Bitcoiners. The link is down below.
Amber, the smart way to stack sats.
Yeah, that's right. Like I just said, we're going to be talking about Elon again. I brought him up in the last one, and here we go. So, don't usually like a lot of his takes, to be honest. If anybody's watched the show, you know that I'm not such a huge fan of him and his narcissism and how wonderful he thinks he is.
Did you short Tesla stock, bro? Like what?
No, I did not.
Yeah, really?
No. You know what? Technically,
Bill Gates.
He's shorting it. So yes, I did short it because I don't own it. But anyways, that's for different reasons. I don't own it based on a PE valuation. So, and yeah, I'm a nerd. And yeah, well, you know what? On PE valuation, you miss out on a lot of major growth stocks. But anyways, I don't buy stocks anymore. So it makes no difference. So here we go. Elon Musk is right. Web3 is BS by Marciej Baron. Okay, or Baron. Let's dive into this article. To put it mildly, I'm not Elon's biggest fan. He's an ignorant, narcissistic, reckless, self-indulgent buffoon who treats his employees like crap and who just happens to be amazing at marketing himself, which helped him become a billionaire despite running unprofitable companies.
Wait, are we talking about Elon right now?
Yeah, we're definitely talking about Elon.
Oh.
100%.
You know he lands rockets, right?
Yeah, he lands rockets. Well, no, his scientists land rockets. Anyways, I digress. But look, that makes no difference, right? I obviously like this piece of the article. Now, I don't agree with everything in it, but we are going to dive into this because Web3, right? We've been telling you that Web3 is complete bullshit. And even though I don't agree with everything in this article, and this person will miss the major point of Bitcoin, as you'll see, they conclude some interesting points about Web3, so let's dive into it. Web3 is an idea which suggests we can achieve a decentralized worldwide web using blockchains. The proponents of this concept like to talk about how Web 2.0 became centralized and controlled by big corporations and how blockchains, crypto, and NFTs can help give the power back to the people. In reality, it's simple bullshit. So far, I agree. Web3 is bullshit on several different levels, but most importantly, it confuses a political and power relationship problem with a technological one. The truth is, blockchains are not only useless in achieving that, we already have the technology to do that. ActivityPub is a protocol that's been available for years and which inspired the creation of fairly successful decentralized federated social networks such as Mastodon. Now, we all, for the Bitcoiners that know, we all remember Mastodon. We were there for 2 weeks and now we're back. Anyways, we're back to Twitter. Any community can create their own ActivityPub instance, which is controlled by them. Even a single user can create their own server instance if they want to and federate with other instances. Okay, so I mean, it all sounds great. So why haven't we seen a massive exodus of people from Twitter and Facebook to Mastodon or similar platforms? The reason for this is that platforms like Twitter have already achieved enormous power and influence, but they also have the network effect. A large user base that simply stays where most of the people they follow are. Exactly. There are plenty of stories of people switching over to Mastodon only to return to Twitter because that's where all the action is. Rightly said. The monopolistic nature of the biggest social media platforms is also beneficial to other companies, which can streamline their advertising and marketing campaigns. This benefits the wider capitalist system. The monopoly of the big players is a natural result of the system we have in place. You start to see some of the interesting leanings in this article. Anyways, let's continue. The main purpose of a blockchain, and really the only reason it can be made useful, is to record transactions. so far, I can't disagree with that point. Anyways, it is admittedly a fairly clever way of avoiding the double spend problem. Okay, so he's starting to get Bitcoin a bit. This is also why, so far, the only major use of blockchains is for digital currency and artificially scarce digital assets, NFTs. Some people have suggested that NFTs could be used for recording things like deeds and property titles, but it makes little sense to use blockchains for recording anything physical or anything that requires off-chain validation, authorization, authentication, or confirmation. Even if we consider the use of oracles. We've talked about oracles before. Anyways, they pretend to do off-chain validation, but really all there are rug pulls. Anyways, so far nobody came up with a compelling DApp idea that is not tied to cryptocurrency in any way. So far, I don't think anybody's made a compelling DApp idea, period. There's Bitcoin and Lightning and the apps that exist on it. Anyways, I digress. Venture capitalists are having a blast. They can suddenly pretend they are radicals who intend to disrupt centralized intermediaries. This is what we tell you guys about the VCs all the time. They can pretend they're the voice of a rebellious generation trying to take on the big guys, right? And that's what a lot of that marketing sounds like. A lot of the Web3 projects are only branded as decentralized, with a lot of them using permissioned or hybrid blockchains, where only the company can add or remove tokens, but when the ownership of the tokens can be traded independently. The technologies supported by the Web3 crowd aren't anything new. The main difference here is that all the projects revolve around DeFi and cryptocurrency. The real reason why VCs are so interested in Web3, and this is what we've been telling you guys, they want to prolong the crypto bubble, right? The shitcoin bubble. NFTs are just an evolution of ICOs. They want to make the projects they have already invested in more relevant and increase the value of any speculative assets associated with them. They want more people to buy shitcoins, more money to enter the market to inflate the prices. They don't care about decentralization or freedom or censorship. They just want to make big bucks before the bubble finally bursts. For these parts, I can't disagree with any of this. He goes on to give the example of Steemit. Okay, they had to fire 70% of their staff when the price of their shitcoin dropped in 2018 during a market crash. These are platforms which have business plans simply built around proprietary shitcoins and their circulation, which we saw when all of those ICOs cratered and we went through the quote-unquote bear market. So here we go. This is where it starts to get a little juicy. The problem isn't a technological one, it's a political one. If we truly want to confront the power held by the big social media companies, we need to go in the opposite direction of what the Web3 cult is trying to take. Look at the profit motive within the industry. Look at adequate regulation. I'd go so far as saying the only way to solve the problem with the large social media companies is to remove business and profit from the whole equation. It's almost like this person is starting to not understand human incentive.
Is this like the anti-communist episode? Like, is this what it's about?
Dude, so hold on here, okay? This is where we wrap up. A radical standpoint would be to further democratize.
There it is again. They fucking use that word all democracy. It's like, oh man.
Yep. So here we go. The radical standpoint would be to further democratize our monetary system and to look at getting rid of money entirely in the far future. Bitcoin isn't radical. It's a step backwards towards marketization, not democratization, giving more power to owners of capital. No, giving more power to people that are willing to put in the work and have low time preference. Anyways, I always find it hilarious when people suggest that cryptocurrencies are confronting any power. So this person did a great job with the dismantling of Web3. It was interesting. They were able to see through enough of the bullshit, but because they don't understand the promise of proof of work, they completely misunderstand why Bitcoin exists. And I find this absolutely hilarious that this person's argument can completely unravel and fall apart in their final statement.
Am I the only one that finds it funny that communists don't understand proof of work? Like, that's fucking hilarious.
What do you mean we can't just print more, Nico?
Oh man, no, but
we must.
He look. So I forgot to tell BJ that is the hardest section to sit through for guests because
we forgot to warn him.
We forgot to warn him. So now we're telling you now.
I found it fascinating. You know what I just read, or what you just read? The equivalent of when you're in grade 3 math and you're starting to learn algebra, and you're like taking the number is 8, and the teacher's like, "How did you get that answer?" The number is 8, right? It's like, I have no idea how I got to the right conclusion. I just know it's right. That's all that matters, right?
Oh man. But I just visualized it in my head. I thought it was so funny because I know exactly what you're talking about. I remember I had that memory. He's so spot on, but the wrong solution. And actually, this kind of ties into the tragedy of fiat and what the fiat does to the economic system, right? Because you have a lot of young people, and this is happening in Canada. This is a great point for BJ to riff on, where the fiat has fucked up the economy so bad that, rightly so, a lot of people are disillusioned with it. But what they get wrong is that they think that the economic system is broken, and they're like, socialism is the answer. What they don't understand is that the money is broken. The money is what's been stealing from you. And if you fix the money, you fix the world, and you fix capitalism. Because right now, this isn't capitalism. This is crony capitalism, right? The top of the pyramid, politicians, under that, bankers, then the upper class, then the middle class, and the lower class, right? Socialism is terrible. It's the ruling class and then everybody else, right? And essentially the solution to this is a more, right, it's upward mobility up and down, and the upper class is essentially like, it's the people that are the most productive, the people that earned it the most, not the parasitic bureaucrats, not the government officials. I don't believe that someone who wins a popularity contest should be the most powerful person. I think it's just, and you see that in society, right? You see how inefficient economies become because of the heavy hand of government. Anyways, that's just my opinion. BJ, what do you think?
Well, I think, in terms of the Canadian experience, some Canadians will get upset at me and others will say I'm completely right. When I always talk about the difference between Canada and America, when Americans ask me, how is it different? One fundamental way. How did the United States gain its independence? You guys fought a war for it. How did Canada gain its independence? Oh, we just waited. We waited till the Queen said, okay, you can have it now, sort of thing. And that is kind of in the ethos.
And she's still the Queen. And she's still the Queen.
And she's still the Queen. We still consider her the Queen.
Yeah. So they're sitting there, and that's why the solution is always, just go back to the government. That will solve our problem no matter what. And people are slowly starting to realize, like people in the Western Canada and Alberta, no coincidence, a large part of Alberta was settled by Texans, that they do have the very American approach of independence and you got to fight for your freedom. But that's not transferable to the rest of the country. And that's really what's killing it right now, that people just don't understand. You need to fight for that independence, right? And at least with, Bitcoin, in my opinion, we've found that common denominator where it allows those people who want to resist, but they're a little bit more passive. They just want to do it in a, passive aggressive manner. It's just like, I'll just take this money over here and stay quiet in the corner. And that's why it's gaining popularity right now.
You actually brought up an amazing point, BJ, and you did it by accident. And there was a tweet that I said today, and it completely correlates what you're saying. And let me read it to you because it's a great original thought. I said, taking Bitcoin into cold storage is a revolutionary act. If enough people do it, we win, right? And essentially, that's it. Bitcoin's a peaceful revolution. All you do is you opt out of their system, and what that does is it takes power away from them. There's no guns, there's no violence. That's it. They have to use violence in order to stop that, but the problem is they don't have the asymmetric advantage that they used to have, right? Because before, it was just a handful of centralized custodians that they had to go after. Nowadays, if enough people take self-custody, especially in America, right? I know Trudeau took away the guns because that's what they always do, right? There's more guns in the United States than there is people. Good luck trying to show up to Texans, knocking down the doors, and it's like, give me your private. Why, right? Like it's interesting. Phil?
So I'm sorry. I just want to add one thing so the guns were gone in Canada way before Trudeau.
But he took away the assault rifles, dude. I saw that.
He took away the assault rifles.
Hold on. He also listed on the banned guns list www.ar15.com. I'm not even kidding. So that's the incompetence of our government. They just did a Google search of AR-15, grabbed a whole bunch of lists of things, and then threw that into the bill. And that's what it ended up being banned. So a whole bunch of guns that weren't even AR-15s and like 6 different domains that had AR-15 and are in the bill. And then they voted on it. So yeah,
it's ridiculous. And I'm sorry, I just wanted to finish by adding, right? We had way back in the late 90s, early 2000s, we had the gun registry that came out in Canada, right? And that was costing Canadians $3 billion a year for legitimate gun owners that have to now all of a sudden register all the firearms in their home. And I want you to think about this. Which criminal is registering their firearm? The criminals aren't registering their firearms. Only the legitimate. It is the dumbest thing in the world. So you know what? It's a whole bunch of mistakes, and they just keep snowballing. Anyways.
No. And by the way, just on that issue, something always to remember: making good people hopeless does not make bad people harmless. Very important to remember that.
That's some wise words, right? I feel
Very
like you learn that from experience. But yeah, it's it's unfortunate, but like I always say, right? The in this world of darkness, Bitcoin is the shining light of hope, and I think that it gives us a very good opportunity to save humanity from tyranny, because and I always say this, right? The future ahead of us is very obvious, right? Central bank digital currencies, which are going to enable total tyranny and slavery, or Bitcoin, which is going to enable freedom. That is the future ahead of us. There is no in between, right? It's obfuscated right now, the battle lines, but you'll see it become more and more defined over time. But anyways, Phil, it's time for
the Daily Meme Review.
Brought to you by Citadel 21. They make the best Bitcoin cultural zine. It's stories, articles, comics by actual Bitcoiners. Some toxic ass Bitcoiners, and the artwork is different for every volume. This is volume 10, and they're scarce. There's only 1,000 physical copies made per volume, so get your print of Citadel 21 today before they run out. All right, everybody, first meme is brought to us by the Bitcoin MD. Shout out to him. I was on at Bitcoin 2021. He was on the panel with me. Good times. Anyways, I basically only hang out with Bitcoiners at this point. The food is poisoned, the money is broken, democracy is a sham, it's all effed, we must rebuild anew. Who the fuck starts a conversation like that? I just sat down. I don't have normie friends because this is what I say to them.
It's all of us.
I no joke. I met up with a friend, one of my high school, I brought him up a couple times on the show, works for Goldman, haven't seen him in a long time, right? I went to go get coffee with him. The hour and a half that we met, an hour I was just talking about Bitcoin, and I was saying shit like this, and the look on his face was like that. Oh man, no corners. They just don't understand. This is freedom. We're fighting. It's peaceful revolution. Anyways, mining.
This one's for Peter Schiff.
Yeah, there you go. Mining gold and mining Bitcoin. It's very true, man.
By the way, did the price of gold just collapse today? Just a small thing. Where's Peter Schiff right now?
It's been at the same price for a decade. Gold has literally been at the same price for a decade. Anyways, all right, this is Galoy. Good morning. Saving using Bitcoin asset, spending using the Lightning Network. Oh, that's interesting, Phil.
Well, that's pretty good. They're letting you know that Bitcoin is a medium of exchange.
It's pretty basic, Phil. You got to step up the mean
Look,
game.
Galoy put the tweet. I figured I'd, throw it in there.
Okay. Who's Galoy?
Come on. I don't know. Bitcoin developers, Nico.
Oh,
okay. Giving him a hard time.
I am giving him dude, I don't censor, man. You got to step up your meme game, bros. Okay.
Come on, Galoy.
Come on, Galoy.
Okay.
You could do it. All right. Anyways, I love this guy. Okay. Ghost of Nakamoto. There we go. Nakadai. I always support the current thing. I always oppose the current thing. You're both sheep. This is what we mean in the beginning when we said that we're apolitical in this sense. Huh? Because these are the traditional tropes. This is what you're looking at. Bitcoin is opting out of that, saying, yo, listen, just you do you, bro. Just leave me the fuck alone, right? And that's what Bitcoin enables you to do. Anyways, moving on. This is the power of Twitter, right? It's narrative trench warfare. It allows very public figures and allows the average person just to respond to them. And sometimes the best responses are memes. Remember, in this narrative trench warfare that we're fighting, if tweets are bullets, memes are artillery. Anyway, Elon tweets, if our Twitter bid succeeds, we will defeat the spam bots or die trying. That's really scary. And authenticate all humans. I like Sailor's approach to this, where you deposit Bitcoin in escrow, and essentially, if you spam or if whatever, you lose the escrow, right? I don't like the bureaucratic upload your ID approach, right? I think some of the beauty of Twitter is the anonymity. And of course, a fellow pleb, like always, what makes you human? To love and care for others. Selecting all images with traffic lights.
It's so good.
I hope it's that easy. Anyways, moving on by Patrick. I lied. I don't have Netflix. Take off your shoes. We're watching Simply Bitcoin and eating steak. Oh, that's hilarious. Okay. Awesome memes. Phil, you could have done better, bro. Especially for this caliber of guest.
I'm so you know, I'm Galoy money.
I am under freaking whelmed, bro.
You know what you needed to do? You needed to search Hong Kong. They tortured Trudeau with Hong Kong. And I'm going to suggest to people all around the world, if Justin Trudeau comes to your city or your country, you might want to get a few 100,000 of your closest friends, go to the local Walmart or equivalent, and buy some emergency air horns, and then show up to wherever he's speaking. And every time that stupid blackface mouth opens, just everybody in unison. Just torture him all over the world. It'd be great.
I think he has nightmares about that. You know, like he wakes up in the middle of the night, like the honking, make it stop. Oh man.
He was nowhere near there. All the honking. That's what was so funny about all the pictures, like the logging truck and whatever. It was right in front of his office. It was hysterical. That's why we called it Trudeau's truck stop. It was amazing.
No, it was. I'm just happy that I lived through that moment in history. Like it's very sad, but also I think it was historic, and I think it's
important.
I think because it ripped off the Band-Aid. Right, like that's really
and don't think it's over. Don't think it's over.
Of course, it's not over. It's just beginning. That was the beginning, right? Exactly. Anyways, for those memes, Phil, I'm gonna give it a Lucio Paletti package that I haven't opened yet. I'm gonna show it tomorrow, but it says fragile, like Trudeau's ego.
What did you get?
You'll see tomorrow.
Oh my god. Okay. Well, look. I didn't think those memes were so terrible, but I do apologize. I could have stepped up my game for BJ. This is true. I can't take that away from Nico. But I am going to give it this awesome score, this fantastic meme that we got today from Enerug T. Shisoka. Take a look at this. I don't know how well you can see that.
I'll pop it up.
I'll put it. Yeah, you pop it up. It's awesome. It's essentially us as the Peaky Blinders, which is a pretty awesome show. I don't remember on which network, but yeah, it's essentially the Simply Bitcoin crew as a bunch of old school 20s gangsters. So I thought that was a pretty cool meme. So thank you.
It was pretty good. I'll pop it up for you guys. Unfortunately,
so it's a meme for the meme review as a meme score, Nico. This is good. This is triple meta.
It is triple meta.
Something as a score as well?
Yeah, of course.
I'm going to give it my free and cheesy Bitcoin 22 sunglasses that I got from the conference that make me look like a Don Johnson wannabe stuck in 1984.
You look like you live in Miami. Okay, that when you put those on,
I look like a tourist in Miami. Everything should have a palm tree on it, right?
Oh, this is so true. Oh man, the tourists don't quite get the Miami look quite right. It's like they think they could go to a store and just buy the sunglasses.
They think this is Miami. So I want to know who at Bitcoin chose these. I mean, it was wonderful, great touch, love them. But I'm like, guys, I don't know. This is definitely appealing to the tourists.
I think people just are happy they got the orange sunglasses.
Yeah.
But I agree. You definitely look like a Miami tour. That's for sure. Anyways, guys, we want to know if you agree with our scores, you disagree. Let us know down in the comment section. Make sure to subscribe to us on alternative video platforms if you've been watching this episode for obvious reasons, like rumble.com and bitcointv.com. And of course, make sure to join our Telegram group and link us some dank Bitcoin memes to review. But anyways, Phil, it's time for
The Daily News.
Brought to you by CryptoCloaks.com. They make the best 3D printed Bitcoin merch, like the famous 3D printed Bitcoin art sculpture grenade. Comes in any color your heart desires. You can customize it. Yes, this are simply Bitcoin colors. You want it in gold because you're Peter Schiff? You can get it in gold. But there's a Bitcoin logo, so he might get mad. Anyways, get yourself a Bitcoin art sculpture grenade today and take advantage of the link down below to get 5% off. CryptoCloaks.com. All right, everybody. So we dropped this news yesterday, and apparently No BS Bitcoin pulled it up. No one has said anything to the contrary. So again, it hasn't been confirmed, but
it's not denied.
I would say it's like 75% there. So first African country adopts Bitcoin currency. I found multiple sources. The Central African Republic adopts cryptocurrency. Apparently they made it legal tender, right? And I also got another confirmation, right? This is Paco de la India. He's been on the show, Run with Bitcoin. The Central African Republic adopts Bitcoin. Of course, the plebs asking for the sauce. And apparently Paco de la India has a close friend in the government. So apparently legal tender has another country made Bitcoin legal tender, the Central African Republic. Makes perfect sense. Like we've always said on the show, the countries that are going to adopt Bitcoin the fastest are the countries that least benefit from the legacy financial system. The Central African Republic is a very poor country like El Salvador, right? So they have the greatest incentive to try something new, right? And what better option than, the best money in the history of mankind, Bitcoin. So I'm going to pass it on to BJ first. BJ, what are your thoughts? I don't think a lot of people know that much about the Central African Republic. It's literally a country in the middle of Africa. I mean, obviously, Central African, but you get what I'm trying to say, right? I don't think a lot of, I've never really heard of it, but that's cool, I guess, right? What are your thoughts, BJ?
I was a little bit surprised because I do know of two other countries that are apparently going to be adopting Bitcoin as legal tender this year. One of those countries, one of the people that I am working with, and we've formed a board for an initiative, is plugged into the central bank in one of those countries, a very, very large Latin American country whose name starts with the letter M, by the way. And I was surprised that it would be coming, unannounced. But hey, at the same time, I'm also not surprised because people are seeing what's happened in El Salvador. That not only has it solved the debanking and remittance issue, but their GDP has increased by 10% in less than a year. So if I'm running a small economy in the middle of Africa and I'm looking for something to enrich myself, because, well, that's what politicians do, but at the same time, elevate my the standard of living in my country and also maybe make some news and get some attention around my country, this is really the way to do it. And I think you're going to see a lot of countries do this. And, like people always say, what's going to happen with Bitcoin? Simple, slowly, then all at once. And I think you're going to see a rush for the door soon.
Absolutely. That's question before I pass it on to Phil. What has been the pushback by the establishment powers? Because we have seen the comments by the IMF. Right. Obviously, the United States, has, because they use the dollar as a weapon, really. What has been the pushback? And I think in Argentina, there was a big momentum also to push it. I know in Honduras, that was the case, right? That was the case. And I know that, the central bank all of a sudden had a little switch. So I think the IMF had their hands on that. What have you seen so far? And what could you tell us, of course?
Well, from the Canadian perspective, it's very interesting because we do have a leadership race on the conservative side, and not to get political, but this is just related to Bitcoin. And the front runner, or I'll just say he's the person who's decided that the lobbyist and establishment have decided he's going to be the winner, has come out in full force in support of Bitcoin and against CBDCs. And that's due in part because so many influential people who I've gotten to know in the Bitcoin space have been pushing behind the scenes, educating him, meeting with him, explaining why it's such an economic benefit to Canada for all the reasons that we know. And this guy's name is Pierre Poilievre. He's an MP. He's the perfect person to do that, just because he's an economics guy. Everybody always complains that, he's kind of, I don't want to say boring. I mean, he really tears Trudeau a new one. But in terms of his policy, it's always about, a tax break, an incentive, and whatever. And as they reached out to him and said, hey, listen, what greater incentive do you want than Bitcoin, which is not only freedom, but you can also lay the path perhaps for a more collateralized economy. You can have all sorts of financial systems that can be built upon Bitcoin, which is completely verifiable. It doesn't have the opaqueness of the current financial system. And to his credit, maybe because he's young, I think he's a Gen Xer like myself and Phil. He might even be a little bit younger than that. But he has adopted it, and he's the first politician in Canadian history to ever do a transaction using the Bitcoin Lightning Network in a restaurant in London, Ontario. So in terms of the Canadian experience, I think things are quite optimistic at this point.
And I just want to add to that, right? We started the show, right, painting a picture of Canada, right, in a certain way where it's like, wow, it's really heading into darkness. But here comes the honey badger. Even with all that bureaucratic moat, Bitcoin still finds a way. Remember, incentives are more powerful than coercion. Phil, what are your thoughts on this, my friend?
So just quickly, as we're talking about this country that just adopted Bitcoin, it occurred to me, and of course what BJ is explaining with the, I'm sorry, is it Peter Poilievre?
Pierre Poilievre.
Pierre.
By the way, Phil, hold on. I want to give a shout out to all the Canadians that made this happen. And there's a lot of them that I'm not going to mention. Tahini's, Greg Foss, Jeff Booth, BTC Sessions. You guys rock. I know that you guys push this a lot. Those are the ones that I'm friendly with. I'm sure there's a lot many, behind the scenes, but you guys really are freedom fighters, BJ. So I just want to give you guys a shout out. Anyways, Phil, sorry.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, for once, I didn't forget what I was going to say, so that's fantastic. Yay, my brain is working. Okay, so anyways, my point is that what I'm seeing here is that the incentives of Bitcoin are just once again disrupting yet another place that Bitcoiners already foresaw that we were going to disrupt, but I think politicians weren't ready for what was coming. And what we're seeing essentially, right, I think what we're going to see is this. We're going to see the politicians and public figures that are money spigot maximalists, okay, and we're going to see the ones that are hard money maximalists. And this is what is, I think, going to come about. It's not going to make a difference anymore what your political party affiliation is. You are either there rent seeking and willing to take all the handouts from all the shitty money, or you're there to provide value and you want to build with Bitcoin. And the other piece that I wanted to mention was this. The IMF does not mention the GDP number from El Salvador. And the only time they mention anything about El Salvador, it's to say that they are having more problems than ever, more upheavals than ever. And also on that point, it made me think, where the hell has Steve Hanke been? Normally, he's all ready to dump all over Bitcoin. We haven't seen him in weeks. Anyways, just some thoughts.
I think Steve Hanke's hiding in his cave, and I think that him and Peter Schiff are, like, I would say, within 2, 3, 4 countries, they'll just spontaneously combust, just out of all that, like, just don't fight the honey badger, just join the team. But I think that I think they doubled down so heavy on their bets that, those old cartoons where, like, the face just gets red and the smoke starts coming out of the ears, that's what I'm picturing, really. So I'm going to pass it back to BJ. BJ, like I was mentioning earlier, you were part of a historic moment. Man, how did Bitcoin facilitate things that you think would not be possible, right? How did it, and again, it goes back to something that I've been touching upon, if you guys been watching the show, right? Where Bitcoin essentially changes the balance of power, where this has never happened in human history, right? Where it changes the balance of power from the state to the individual. So BJ, how would you, drop us some stories, man?
Honestly, I mean, we're doing a book right now because there's so many stories that went on over those that month or so, that every day was a life-changing experience, at least for me. But in terms of Bitcoin, how it changed things, I'm like, dude, this was the template. Like, look at it this way. We had the GoFundMe. We hit $10.1 million. And behind the scenes, the local city government was trying to lobby GoFundMe to ban our campaign. They were ultimately successful after the first 1 point something million was transferred and then blocked by TD Bank. So the banking system blocked it. GoFundMe returned all the funding. And by the way, just a little asterisk, when GoFundMe announced that they're going to cancel our campaign after 2 weeks, I think, as it was, they said, and we're going to keep the money and we're going to give it to accredited charities of our choice. And then, again, this is not political, but Florida man Ron DeSantis came out swinging again and said, that sounds like criminal fraud. I think we should have an investigation into GoFundMe's dealings and their terms of service. And GoFundMe responded with, no, it's okay. Well, we're going to return it. So they returned it. Okay. And when we went to the next platform, which was a fiat-based platform, Give, Send, Go, the same thing happened. We raised $4.5 million in a day, in 1 day. And then ultimately I think it was around $12 million. I wasn't on the finance side of things, but just what the board told me. And, 3.5, I think, was transferred and then frozen by Stripe. And then the remainder was held by Give, Send, Go for a period of time. And the government, the Ontario government, a conservative government, so this is one for the lefty Bitcoiners, so you can't say it's not always just you guys. The conservative premier, Doug Ford, the brother of Rob Ford, who you remember from the crack videos, he put an injunction on any money that Give, Send, Go collected for the Freedom Convoy, which prevented that money from even coming into the country. But you know what was going on the entire time? People in the Bitcoin world were raising money. They set up a tally coin. They were collecting it. And there was a team of guys that came in into my room. They said, hey, we're Bitcoin. Good to meet you. We just want to meet you face to face. Said, great. Like, they're awesome. I don't know how they did it. They did paper wallets, multiple different wallets. They went to truckers. They taught them how to download, explained what Bitcoin is, gave them a few sats as a trial. And then they walked around and were giving, I believe it was $8,000 to each trucker for coming out to Ottawa to try to save our country and save that word that the political class loves, which is democracy, to save our democracy and to help some. And a couple of them just broke down in tears because, they missed a truck payment. They didn't know how they're going to make the next payment. They have their mortgage and all that sort of stuff. And they're not wealthy people. They're middle-class people, small business people. And they felt like they were at the end of the ropes. A lot of these people started losing contracts because they couldn't go cross-border anymore. I know of 2 people specifically that were told by their doctors, you're high risk for, I don't know, I'm not a doctor. I don't remember the name of the illness that they have, but they should stem away from getting a second dose after a massive negative reaction to the first one. And so they lost their gigs crossing the border. So for them to get this $8,000 from the Bitcoin community, I hate that word, but you know what I'm getting at. It was not only life-changing for them, but you talk about eye-opening. They went from, yeah, maybe it's interesting, whatever, to like, this thing has just saved my business. I have to learn what it is. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you, Nico, at any time. I go on a regular radio program in Toronto once every week, once every couple of weeks, Saga 960 with Mark Petroni. He's a very well-known journalist there. And his audience is mainly boomers. And the reason I have that guy on my Twitter account is because after so many episodes, they started sending him emails saying, yeah, who's that guy who comes in talking about the Bitcoin thing? I'm starting to read about it. Can you bring him on? Because I'm curious about this. Because everybody sees what's going on with monetary policy in the world and inflation. And it's not even that they love Bitcoin or something else. They need something. And when this alternative is coming down the pipeline, they're like, okay, I'm open to learning to see what it is. And we're doing our best to orange pill as many of those people as possible. But you had to see it, man, on the ground. It was crazy.
I could imagine. And, you know, I've been educating on Bitcoin for about 6 years now. And something that I've noticed, right, is that in Western countries, usually when you tell people about Bitcoin, you know, they're attracted for the speculative reasons, right? What I've noticed in developing countries, right, is that they adopt Bitcoin out of necessity. And
That's right.
And what happened in Canada is an example of necessity, right? An example of a situation where you need apolitical money that doesn't have a political bias. And this isn't just happening in Canada, right? This is happening in Nigeria. This is happening in Turkey. This is happening in Afghanistan. This is happening in Venezuela. This is happening in Cuba, right? Cuba, Venezuela, Afghanistan, all cut off from the financial system because of what your U.S. politicians think. You know what's the only thing that still works? Bitcoin, right? And that's the importance of this. This is a worldwide phenomenon. And I think, BJ, you just gave an on-the-ground example of the power of Bitcoin and the power that it gives the individual, where before he was essentially hopeless, right? And I think that is the beauty of Bitcoin, not to mention the number go up technology, right? As well, you know, it's just all this come together, and all of a sudden, like I said earlier, in a world full of darkness, there is hope. Anyways, guys, before we wrap up, BJ, what is the initiative that you guys are launching to help truckers? Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
So there's a number of people who have been supporting the trucker convoy the entire time. They've seen what's going on. They are in the Bitcoin space, and they're launching an initiative called Honking for Freedom, which will be launched sometime in the month of May. It keeps getting delayed for a number of reasons, but in May at some point it'll be launched, probably early in the month. And the idea is there are many truckers who had received citations and penalties or charges from the Canadian government. So part of the initiative is going to be to raise money for those truckers. Last I checked, because I'm communicating them with certain people and organizations defending them, there's at least 35 truckers that were subjected to fines or penalties or charges. So that's one initiative. The second thing is there's a lot of people who want retribution and don't want the government to be able to get away with what they did. And they want to see some legal action, not only against the government, but the fake news media. So it's going to be raising money to file specific defamation suits against members of the media who way overstepped the lines with their journalistic accreditation. Remember, you need a license to be a journalist in Canada now. And they would like to see those organizations that defamed either Bitcoin, Bitcoiners, people, whatever pejoratives that were laid unfairly and unjustly, they want to see some sort of aggressive action. And the other is third-party activism to help educate people in terms of what happened there, what kind of ties some of these people have, what Bitcoin can do for freedom, and what it did for people in the trucking convoy to kind of better educate people across the political spectrum, by the way. So when people say to me, like, I'm not terribly right-wing, I'm kind of center-right, maybe center, right? But I don't want to take away the rights from people who are on the opposite side of the spectrum. I want them to be able to protest as well. It's their right, and I will protect their right to speak, much like I'll protect my right to speak. And Bitcoin allows them to do that. Mm-hmm. So I caution them when they want to get on the side of censorship and help support anybody in government, doesn't matter your party, who wants to quash speech and quash Bitcoin and quash free money. You know what? That may boomerang around and hit you in the skull really hard. So you might want to be a little bit more open. So the initiative is going to be called Honking for Freedom. And one of the people on my board who wants me to tell everybody, he's, well, not on my board, but on the board, his name is Jeffrey Wernick. Jeffrey is, if you search him online, he's an OG Bitcoiner, started mining in 2009, was a financial guy. He's been involved in some projects you've heard of, Parler, Rumble, a number of other things, other people that he's been propping up in the space for some time. Great guy. He's really motivated by this, and they're putting together a team that will help further this initiative for everybody to fight back, irrespective of your political affiliation. Because again, unlike what the fake news wants to say, I had many conversations with people who are former school board trustees, people that were from the NDP, the far left party in Canada, who said, I might disagree with you on certain perspectives, but we all have to agree on freedom and the right to speak, and we need to respect each other's right to speak up and learn to love each other and to unify. And if we do that, then we'll get freedom, because that's what happens when the media and politicians get out of the way. We all start to come together, irrespective of our differences.
Absolutely, and I think that all Bitcoiners really are libertarians, right? Whether it's libertarian left or libertarian right. It's about allowing the people that you don't agree with, right? Which is why Bitcoin is called the money of enemies, right? To what's the famous quote from Voltaire? I might not agree what you have to say, but I'll fight to death defending it, something like that.
Right.
And I think that really encompasses Bitcoin, and I think that the founding fathers in America really understood this concept very well, right? And again, it's because they fought a war, right? And it's very simple, right? The person that gets to decide what is misinformation and what is not becomes a tyrant. So what is the other option? Just let the free market of ideas figure it out, right? Let people come to their own conclusions. But of course, the central planners, they think they know what's best, right? And if you don't agree with them, you're dangerous to democracy, and that's misinformation. But anyways, Phil, there was an open source software release today. Why don't you tell everybody about it?
Software releases. One brought to you by CypherSafe. Check them out, cyphersafe.io. Don't flush your seed down the toilet because it's on paper. Store it on the Cypher wheel. I promise you can't flush this thing down the toilet. Or store it in the all-new Cypher Grid. They both come with a tamper-resistant wire, but the grid comes with a punch tool. All right, we've got Bitcoin Core version, and I'm going to say it correctly, 0.23.0. That's right, we're not at a 1.0 version yet. Sorry, people. Anyways, the link to that is down below in the show notes. Don't forget to check us out on our audio-only platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor. If you want to stream us sats, check us out on fountain.fm, and you could stream us sats with Breeze.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. All right, and I was going to correct you, by the way. If you said version 2.23, I was like, nope, it's 0.3. And what I've also heard, too, right, is that Bitcoin will never be version 1.0 because it will never be completed. So I've also heard that as well. So I'm glad you caught that, Phil. You're a Bitcoiner, man. Anyways, I want to give...
We're doing it right.
We're doing it right. Someone would have, tore us a new one in the comments. Anyways, before we go, I'm going to give a very special shout out to our clothing sponsor. Phil and I wear the hoodies every episode. RepresentLTD.com. And you can take advantage of the link down below to get 10% off. And I also want to give a very, very special shout out to this awesome guest. He is a freedom fighter, whether he knows it or not. Again, this is the transition into the information age. Violence has diminishing returns. So really, it's about who controls the narrative, right? That's really how the world works today. And I think that BJ, you played a role, man, in the liberation of Canada. Really, that's what I'm seeing, right? And I love how you guys ran into Bitcoin and you're using Bitcoin to facilitate that. So you definitely want to give this guy a follow on Twitter at BJ Ditcher. You can go give a follow on Twitter. And guys, that was the episode. If you enjoyed the show, you know what to do. Smash that like button. Smash it. And of course, you want to continue hearing the Bitcoin news from the plebe perspective and the catastrophic fails from the shitcoin central planner and the communists. That's right. I'm dropping that bomb today. Definitely consider subscribing to Simply Bitcoin, and we'll see you on the next one.
To quote our excellent guest, making good people hopeless doesn't make bad people harmless.